Thank you, Ken. Thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of embarrassed to say, yes, I am a life member here. It's been a long time since I've been active, but I've also been active with the Cowlitz County Search and Rescue for 35 years, and I volunteered for the county for 37 years. Wasn't quite sure what all to talk about tonight, so I did get some history about our team and how we started and how we became who we are today. A little takeaway at the end. Talk louder? Okay. I know I am kind of soft talked, so. So I got some history here, and I have some takeaways at the end of what I thought the hiking club could benefit from, what to put in your packs. And if you have questions, please, on any scenarios or anything you want me to talk about, happy to do that. Have any questions in between, please interrupt me. Or if you know anything, I'm open. But our mission statement. Cowlitz County Search and Rescue Team is to supply the area with a group of competent, trained, equipped volunteers who are able, without charge or obligation, to emergency service and community welfare. That's our mission statement. We are volunteers for the Sheriff's Office. None of us are paid. And why are we volunteers for the Sheriff's Office? Because the Sheriff's Office has the ultimate responsibility of search and rescue in their county. We have 39 counties in the state of Washington. It's an easy way to divide up everything, to know who has responsibility, so they give it to the Sheriff's Office. Our relationship with the Sheriff's Office is very good. We've earned it. They let us do things which a lot of counties, search and rescue groups don't let them do. Like, we go out on evidence searches and help with crime scenes and stuff for getting evidence. But we've earned that trust over the years to be able to work with the Sheriff's Office to do that. How we started. We actually started as a group back in 1968. And it was actually a group of people, well, before 68, when a sheriff needed volunteers, the closest search and rescue group was Lewis County, Lewis River, which was down in like Clark County area. And they would have to call them up to help. So there was actually a small group of people from Cowlitz County, Columbia County, which was across the river, and Wahkiakum County. And they decided to get together and put a working on a search and rescue group. And so they did. And November of 1968, they formed Cowlitz County. Well, it wasn't Cowlitz County. They had their first meeting, and some of the things they had to discuss was a name for the team. And 3 names came up. One of them was Cowlitz County Search and Rescue Team. The other was Tri-County Search and Rescue, because there was basically 3 counties represented, or Tri-City. So it's not obvious, but what do you think they voted on? Well, not obvious. They actually voted on Tri-County. Yes. So it was Tri-County until the late 80s, and then they changed over to Cowlitz County Search and Rescue. I know it was a trick question, sorry. Let's see here. They also voted that they wanted 10 members minimum and no more than 15. Why? Not sure. So it was actually a small group. And then nowadays, being I'm the president of the group, I'll take as many as we can get because we need it. So that was what was discussed. And they had another meeting in December, and they had to do the team bylaws, which is important. And then also they had to start out with money. So they started off with $33.55. How they come up with that, I'm assuming people were just pulling change out of their pocket and throw it on there, and that's what they started with. But that's how we started as a group. Some of the other things they covered was basically they went off the other counties search and rescue group to make up the bylaws. You had to be registered with the Department of Civil Defense, which they call Department of Emergency Management, which did background checks on you and stuff and make sure you were a decent person. Also, one of the requirements is you had to have an FCC license, because back then everything was ran on CBs. And if we all remember the CB days, you had to have a license to be legal to run, which our call sign was KCK 7809. Also, we had to be current in our first aid, and today's still the same. And the official clothing they decided on was orange coveralls. You would be seen out in the woods with orange coveralls. The bad thing with coveralls back then, everything was made out of cotton. And we all know cotton, when it gets wet, it's a bad thing being out in the woods with cotton. So what do? So what do you do as a new team? We had to raise money. So we did a lot of fundraising in the early days. We did bake sales, rummage sales, fair booths. We put on dances. Car parking at fairs, did car parking on Castle Rock for the motorcycle races, and we also worked with the Special Olympics when they had them here in the area. Also, in 1968, apparently, what I read, our team must have brought this in, because later on other groups have taken over, but remember donkey basketball? We still actually have a team member that was participating in that, and he said he has stepped on toes, kicked shins. He says it was rough to make a few $100, but that's what they did. I remember as a kid watching, I don't know if it was Cowlitz County, but I remember the police departments and fire departments would go at it at each other playing donkey basketball, and that was pretty interesting. So raising money back then was kind of tough. Also, some of the non-fundraising things we did, and we still do, we teach the Hug a Tree program to students in schools, and we also do Scout merit badges. So Scout leaders will call us up if they have merit badges they want us to teach, and we will do that. Our first search was actually about 6 months later. It was in July, 4th of July actually. It was up in the Toutle area for 4 teenage males, and we were dispatched out at 8:40 p.m. They got the times here, and actually we found them at 10:10. They were found unharmed, and so it looked like it was a good, successful, easy search. But that was our first search. First time we also used our call sign on the CB radio, and channel 7 back then was the search and rescue frequency. We kind of made note if people were lost, use channel 7. So a couple months later, after that search, and I'm sure maybe it hit the paper, I'm not sure, but remember when I said the max membership was 15? Well, by September it grew to 55.
Oh my word.
Yeah, so it's almost kind of where we are now. We're actually about 70. So active-wise, we probably have a good 20, 25 members that are really active. But when there's a search or something, people come out of the woodwork and help. So, 1970, we finally found a building, which was the Civil Defense building that we were able to have our own meetings and training at. I think in the parking lot is where we kept some of our gear. That's where we did a lot of our training, which was rope work, helicopters. We did a lot of map and compass back then, and basic survival skills. We met monthly to do our training, and also the teams participated in a yearly state SAR conference. And what the state SAR conference is once a year the state puts on, they pick a county and they put a conference in, they hire a bunch of instructors, and it's really a good learning resource for a lot of the smaller counties that don't have instructors or don't have the ability to get instruction. So that was the one time a year that they were able to get instructions and get certifications and stuff. So we also participated in that, and we also teach in that too. Of course, our snow training we did up in Blewett Pass. How many people know where Blewett Pass is? Up by Leavenworth. Yeah. That was a little before my time, but we went up to Mount Rainier in my time. 1971, we actually able to purchase and acquire our first vehicle. It was orange crew crummy. Now, who knows what a crew crummy is? Some people are laughing. Of course, you know, by the time we get it, probably the condition's in. Yeah. So that's what we had. And so it actually helped hold all our rope and rappelling equipment at the time in a litter. That's what we stored it in. That was our crew crummy. And a couple years later, we ended up somehow buying the scanner was a big thing, because that's how we were able to keep track of the sheriff's traffic, to kind of get forewarning that if they're out starting to look for people, they would respond. 74, we bought a small bus. We called it Control 20. That's where we ran our searches out of. 75, we grew into a Jeep and a trailer, and a few years later we had a 67 Bronco that replaced the Jeep. And then now 67 Bronco, I wish we had that now. Those are nice rigs. Yeah, they're pretty spendy. And of course, I'm doing the math here, and it's like, you know, 67 Bronco, and you know, this is like in 75, 76, you know, this rig is only 8, 9 years old, and I'm thinking they were doing pretty good to only have a rig that's only that new, I would say. Our rigs right now that we have are 20 years old. Of course, they're a little more reliable, but so they were doing pretty good back then. Of course, from 1976, I'll try to move on here, we moved from the Civil Defense Building to what we call the VSI. Now, what the VSI is called, the Vehicle Safety Inspection. And does anybody know where that was at? It's at the fairgrounds, that little silver building where you park, that little condemned. Well, they condemned it because the State Patrol did their vehicle safety inspection back in the day. And then when it was condemned, what did they do? They gave it to the volunteers. So we had a spot where we can park all our vehicles and stuff. It helped out. And we did training there and stuff. And then, speed up to 1996, the volunteers of Cowlitz County helped put together which we call the RISED complex, which houses a bunch of different volunteer groups. And where that RISED Foundation building is if you go down the freeway south from here, you look to the left and you will see Search and Rescue building. Has anybody seen that? Okay. It's right next to the Cowlitz there as you turn. It's just as you go past the mall and you start veering as you're going south, we're right over there. And it's a nice complex. So we built that for Cowlitz County SAR, the Sheriff Reserves, and the Cowlitz Dive Team is in there. Amateur Radio Group is in there, and Coast Guard Auxiliary, which they're not in there now, and Civil Air Patrol. But today's equipment, we have a couple of Ford F550 6-seater trucks. Those were old fire rigs. They're in good shape, so we were able to have those. We have one F450 truck, 4-door truck. We have an Expedition, a Blazer. We have an equipment trailer that holds all our stuff, and we have one command trailer. So that's basically our major stuff that we have right now, and it's all in good running shape, and we've expanded quite a bit since the beginning. As a volunteer, the training for search and rescue, the state has put out guidelines, but they want to see minimum requirements that all the counties meet. Really, it's up to the sheriff what they want, but we meet and exceed all those standards. As a new volunteer starting out with our group, their training academy, we have it the first 4 months of the year, and it's the last weekend of the month. So in January, I'm just going to throw out some of the classes. We have a legal class. What are the do's and don'ts when search and rescue, what you can do. There's a lot of things you can do wrong that can get you in trouble. So there's a legal aspect of it that we cover. Physical, mental health, and fitness, we go over that. Radio operation, helicopter operations, mobilization and demobilization of all of our equipment, SAR management, and there's a lot been in SAR management that lost person behavior that a lot of studies have been going into. So when we find people, we report back on where we found them, how far they were, where they were last seen, and this all goes into a pool. So now as managers, we can look at it when we're running a search, like say an Alzheimer's, on the average, this type of Alzheimer's might walk X amount of distance, or they do these kind of behaviors, or a mushroom picker does this kind of behavior. And we record all that, so then it kind of gives us a model when we find, or we're looking for somebody. It's, well, 90% of the lost hunters do this. It kind of helps us. Not guaranteed that we're going to find them that way, but in our SAR management, we learn about stuff like that. Crime scenes, like I said, our county is fortunate enough where we work crime scenes with the law enforcement, not just the sheriff, but just lately with Kelso Police, Longview Police, any law enforcement agency that might need help. And of course, that first weekend we also learned about survival gear and skills. Our February, our next month, the last weekend, we do navigation classes and exercises. We do search techniques and clue awareness. Clue awareness, where we put a bunch of clues out in a certain given area, and then we have people walk through and then they record what they see. And then we'll give them a percentage on how well they did. Because when we're looking for lost people, we're looking for clues. You just don't walk right up to the person. We're always looking for footsteps, broken branches, candy wrappers, anything they might leave. Those are all clues. And that's what we look for. And then you'll come across the person. Our March training, basically it's all medical. That whole weekend we do medical scenarios, and it's all medical, which is pretty intense. April, we do an overnight where we test everyone's skills on what they learned on the first 3 months prior to that. So that's basically, as a volunteer in search and rescue, that's just the beginning of how we train them. Some of the services we do currently, we do wilderness search, we do urban search, and we do out-of-county searches. A lot of out-of-county people will call us to come in and help because, you know, especially after the first operation period, which is usually 8 hours, their volunteers might be all tired and they need another fresh group of people to come in. So out-of-counties help each other to keep the search going. We do crime scenes for the local law enforcement. We help Cowlitz dive team when needed. We do a lot of surface support, safety for them, and they get called out quite a bit, being that we have a lot of rivers here in Cowlitz County. We also help with medical transportation in the wintertime when doctors and nurses can't make it to the hospital because they're snowed in. We help go out and take them to the hospital. Hemodialysis is another one that we transfer patients to. Also, the amateur radio group, ham radio group, they also help within taking patients. Of course, flood evacuation. We teach the scouting groups, like I said. We help the fairgrounds sell tickets. Actually, it's kind of one of our fundraisers. We also clean up after the events, so the grandstands and stuff. And 4th of July, we do night security. Not that we're law enforcement officers, but we'll make a phone call if we see something that looks funny. And that's another way we make money. So, any questions so far on anything? It's just about our group. Might be boring, but
You use drones in your...
the ACS, the Amateur Radio Group, does drones. We haven't really gotten into that. They went to drones because also, and I'm a member of that group too. We used to do ELTs, which we still do. An ELT is an emergency locating transmitter, which is on planes. And if they wreck, it sends off a signal, and we have the equipment, and we did that through the Amateur Radio Group. Well, since there's not much activity in that, thank goodness, they adopted and started going into drones. The sheriff office has drones. They have drones. Mainly, almost all law enforcement agencies are getting drones because they are pretty handy. It would help probably for us to have some drones just for looking over clear cuts and stuff. We'll probably maybe get there one day. But right now, we're calling other groups to come in and help since they have the expertise in that. And it gives them something to do too. Why it frees up some of our people to go ahead and search and do their expertise. Yes?
When you have 70 people, How do you decide who goes out and searching rescue? The call comes in.
Well, everyone to come. We don't get that many, but everyone has their specialties. Some people are for base help. They do the logistics. We have management teams that will plan operations, and then send teams. And then we have our people that are, what we call the ground pounders. And they sign in and they say what they do. Because sometimes the ground pounder goes, I hurt my leg last week, but I really can't go out hiking or do anything out in the woods, but I can stay around base camp and maybe make coffee or or fill the fuel generators up or something. So it depends at the point when you get there. You kind of tell what you want to do and how you're geared up and what kind of search it is too. Sometimes we have some scenarios that might not be pleasant, and some people might go, it's not for me right now, I'm not ready for that. Fine, we'll find everything for you to do. So it varies, but we just kind of plan at the time. Some takeaways for you guys. Rules of three. Anybody know what the rules of three are? Pretty simple. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and then 3 weeks without food. It's kind of what you can survive. I don't think I'd want to go 3 weeks without food. But, if you start thinking about survival, you kind of think that way. Air is pretty abundant as long as you're not in a cave. You can go, around here we're lucky with the water that we have. They're everywhere. It's mainly if you can purify it. And without food, if you're mobile in this county, there's roads, there's not too many spots in this county where you're going to find a 4 or 5 mile area where there's not a road in it. If you just keep walking the same direction, you're going to run into a road. Yes?
How often do you get called out?
It varies. When I first started, we used to have searches 2 to 3 times a month. We've actually had 3 searches going on in one weekend. Lately, with new technology and stuff, we get called out 3 or 4 times maybe a year for searches, for looking for a person. That's why a lot of times we start getting used for crime scenes, because crime scenes go up and we're getting used that way too. So I want to say technology has slowed it down. We used to get called out for searches where they never came back and they don't know why, so the family was nervous. They call us, we go out there, a lot of times we'd find them just fine. They made camp, they just couldn't make it out, but they had no way of communicating. So their family didn't know. So a lot of times they weren't in a bad scenario, but nowadays, a lot of places, they get coverage. Not every place though. But when they do get coverage, they'll call back going, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a little late or whatever. And, so that eliminated a lot of our calls. So, plus with people with GPSs now and stuff, they find their way out, which is a good thing. Some of the things I was thinking is when I used to hike with a group here, I know we ran into a couple scenarios where a member got hurt and fell, and some of the things that you should not only think about when you pack something for you, but think about the other person you might run across. And like right now, you might find a lot of people out there that are diabetic, and when they're out there exercising, they get low blood sugar pretty fast. So you might run across somebody, so bring extra food. Think about people like that. But first and always notify someone about your trip. Now the group here is really good. But if you're out there hiking by yourself or with somebody, always notify where you're going and when you're going to be back. That's the biggie. So at least someone can make a phone call. Instead of 2-3 days later, we'd get them where, hey, so-and-so didn't show up to work. It's work calling and not the family. We've had those. Try to buy the best gear you can for your trip. Don't cheap out on boots. we all know, you all know as hikers. That's the most important. But usually I talk to people who are not hikers and they really don't know. They'll buy a brand new set of boots and they're ready to go. It's like, break them in first, because there's nothing worse than having calluses and blisters on your feet. And as a worker or a searcher, all of a sudden you're done. Mm-hmm. Now we got to help them out and not the person we're trying to find. So, and the best gear you can. Clothing for the climate. We all know what kind of climate we have around here. The layering system. There's still people that like to wear wool, which is fine. It works great. It's heavy. There's new synthetics out there, polypropylenes and all that kind of stuff that really are lightweight. They're wicking. There's good properties about them. Good things to have in your pack. Stay away from cotton. And does everybody know about cotton? Mm-hmm. It is, when it gets wet, it really draws the heat out of you really fast. They've actually did tests where they wrap things up with different materials and blew air across them while they were wet and noticed the chill about them. And cotton was the worst. Some of the things in backpacks, always have a first aid kit. Not only for you, but maybe for someone else that you might run across on the trail. Flashlight. How many times have you, this group is really good. You guys are timed, you know what trails you're on, you really know how you're coming back. Other thing that I really liked about the group here when I used to hike is that there was always speed hikers. And there was always people in the middle, then there was people who were just enjoying themselves and getting there. But what I liked about it is no one went alone. Everyone stayed in like 2 to 3 minimum groups. If there was speed walkers, well, there was 2 or 3 of them. If somebody was left behind, there was other people who would make sure that there was 2 or 3 behind. I always thought that was very wise of how this team, your hiking group, did that. So keep that up. But flashlight, I've been out before and came out later than I thought on my own personal stuff, and I've seen people walk out with cell phone lights on. I mean, that's last resort coming out. But flashlight. For survival, shelter is probably one of your best things. This hypothermia will get to you. And they say more people have died of hypothermia in 50-degree weather. And why 50-degree weather? 50 is just about enough where it's like, well, I don't need to carry all that extra clothes, but it'll get cold. And so think about your gear, your shelter. And a lot of times, your shelter could be a small tent you can throw in. They make these real small compact tents. A tarp will work as a shelter. I like to use my clothing. I'll carry a little bit extra clothing and my rain gear, and I will just lay up against a tree if I have to, and that's my shelter. Everyone will have a different comfort zone. Some people like to carry tents and sleeping bags and all that. Some people will carry the bare minimum, just some clothing. That's it. So depends on where your comfort zone is. But your shelter is going to be your biggest thing to keep you surviving out there. Water, you'll be fine. Air is good naturally. Food, you'll be good for a while. It's the hypothermia that'll get to you overnight or real quick. So think about your shelter and try to have some type of shelter with you. Fire starter. Well, I like to stay warm at night. Gives you security. So have some type of fire shelter, a fire starter in the back of your pack. They make all different types now. They've got these stuff now, there's little kits that you just scrape a little bit, and you don't need matches. There's all these sorts of things. Carry a lighter, whatever makes you comfortable. Like I said, there's a lot of water around here, so if you don't want to carry a lot of bottles with you, get a filter. Way of purifying it. Lasts a long ways with that. Of course, know your area you're going in, for map and compass. For navigation, GPS seems to be a new thing. Everybody likes their GPSs. If you got cell service, people use their phone. But I don't like relying on that. Me, I'm more of a map and compass kind of a guy. Or when we go on trails, you already have the trails laid out and the intersecting trails, because you can get mixed up by trails that lead off and you don't know it. So map and compass for me. GPS, I have one. They're nice. I usually set my start point, I shut it off so batteries don't go dead, and then if I need to go somewhere and I know how far I went, I'll turn it back on. I find my distance. It's fun to play with, but they will get you back. Signal mirror. Now, who's all used the signal mirror before? Yeah, a lot of companies will have them, and it wasn't until a while ago I really realized, I was like, well, how do you know they're seeing that reflection or not? And what you do is you get the reflection and you put your fingers out like a sight, and you're looking at whatever helicopter plane, and as soon as that reflection hits the back of your hand, you know that reflection is going towards the plane. So that's how you do that. That's how you properly use the signal. Radio communications. Do you have those little handheld radios? Good. That's good to hear. And do you put them like the people who are like the speed walkers and some of that?
One in front, one in the sweep, and one in the middle. And we very rarely lose somebody, and when we do, we always find them.
And that's why, right? Yeah. No, that's great, because that's good, because when I was really active, we didn't have radios here. So I'm glad to see that communication, that'll help out so much, especially if there's problems. We actually had a problem, I won't mention any names, we were coming from the gorge with the hiking team here, and we had somebody fall off the side, and they went down and hit their head on a couple of rocks, and he was quite comical, and he was tough as nails, this gentleman was. He was probably in his 80s at that time, and yeah, he was an old military guy, and he was but boy, and he was behind us, we didn't know. We didn't have radios. You know, like you said, the groups kind of, but the people who were with him brought him out, and we kind of stopped and waited. We didn't know anything was going on, except for we didn't see him. And he came down, he had gashes in his head, blood, and people were hiking up, and they were kind of looking at him like, what happened to him? But he did well. But anyways, radios would have really been nice, because they could have had help a lot faster, because they also had to go down and get him and back him up out of the hill. I can't remember what Devil's Peak or something that hike was, down by the gorge down there. I don't remember that. You know, whistle. Whistle is so much better if you have a whistle with you than trying to yell and scream. It not only travels a lot further in distance, but you're using less energy blowing through a whistle than trying to yell and scream. Of course, another safety, or just a tool to have, is a knife, some rope and webbing. You don't need a lot of it. These are more survival type situations. And of course, food. And I know every time when we went out on a hike, it was all about a lunch spot. We hiked to the one spot, we had their lunch, and then we came back. So really, I don't see food being an issue. But so, I mean, those are some takeaways to put into pack, and it's always creative for me to try to find things that I can do multiples. Like my compass might have a signal mirror with it. You know, my knife might have wrapping on the handle, which might be my rope. I mean, you can do things to multiple through your tools. But those are just some of the basics. I know when you go out on hikes, you're very safe. You're in a big group, and you have a place where you're going. You tell everywhere you're going, and then you come back. So I don't think you guys probably really had too many problems.
Well, it's always the unknown what I worry about. You don't know if someone's going to trip and fall, which happens a lot.
Right. That's where.
And honestly, I think we've been lucky over the years. We've taken a first aid course, I think it was last year.
Okay. Yeah, and they have actually a wilderness first aid too, which might teach you more into, like, say if someone breaks a leg or gets a sprain, it would probably be more common.
We've had people go to that, the REI.
Yes.
Our wilderness course.
Yeah, that would be something I think would be real beneficial for members to have. Learn how to splint up an ankle or something so they can still walk out, and mobilizing joints. If it gets worse where they break something, of course you're going to be hopefully with communication. And most of the trails you're on, you're not the only one on there. Normally, I've always remember seeing people passing at some point. It's always pretty active trails, so you can get out that way too if someone's going out, or someone to go out and get help. Normally they're always big enough groups where you can separate. And hopefully by then maybe your cell phone will have cell service. So, questions?
So if you have a cell phone, you're lost, and you can't get to anybody. Well, if you dial 911, will that send a ping out that you can focus on?
Not from the cell phone. You're saying you don't get no coverage.
Well, you can't reach anyone when you're calling.
Yeah. No, there is some things that cell towers can still track, very minimal, where you can't get service to, but they can still triangulate you. And normally we have to, we've done this, but we have to call, it normally calls for a court order basically to get permission from the cell company to give you information on, because it's a privacy thing, of where you're at. But if they know it's an emergency, there is things that can happen, and what they do is they triangulate you, and they can get you within a mile or so. That's when search and rescue will come. But that usually is, hopefully someone by then has already called, said, this person is overdue. And the first thing they're going to do is like, well, where's their cell phone still on? Is it still pinging out there? And that will kind of get them into an area. So.
And something else to remember is if you've got a weak signal, texting will take a lot less signal than phone call.
Yep.
We run into that all the time on fires where there's not a good enough signal to make phone calls, so we can text back and forth.
And if you can, and it's safe, try to get elevation. You know, if you're down a creek bottom, but you go, oh, this trail another half a mile will be up on top, try to go if you can. If you're lost and you're mobile, you can still walk around and try to get some elevation if that's your only means of cell phone. Try to get some height. They have other things I think you talked about. They have transmitters, the Spot. There's a bunch of names of services that you can send out, like kind of like text, that if you need help. And some of those are by satellite. Sometimes the satellite might take a while, 6 hours or 8 hours before it comes by again and get your ping, but it is a way. The important thing is tell somebody where you're at. And hopefully they can call somebody. And the biggest thing is to find your vehicle. Because, if you say you're going to be at X point and, okay, they're not there, first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to point X. And if they don't see your vehicle there, then they're going, okay, they're probably not here, more likely. So, people do change their plans. It happens. The biggest thing is tell somebody when you're getting back. But if you do change your plans, try to notify the person you talk to about where you're going so they can be updated. Because it knocks hours off of our time trying to find your vehicle and where your last known point. We'd call that your last known point because we're pretty sure that you probably drove it there. So if you ever get lost, stay calm. Sit down for a little bit. Gain your thoughts. You got there somehow. Just think about it. When you get panic mode, you start doing things that you want to get up and you want to start running. You can get hurt that way, tripping and falling. If it's dark, night, best thing to do is sit tight, wait till morning. Hug a tree. Get underneath try to find a little shelter or something. And just try to stay warm. Don't use a lot of energy up. And just wait till daylight. Either you can walk out from there. We try to find people at night. We will search all night. And when they're moving, it's harder to find them than if they stayed still. The biggest thing is keep calm and think about it. And don't try to panic, even though it could be scary. Yes.
So how do you finance your operations? Donations or?
Yes, we're all strictly donations. We do some fundraising. We do a couple things for the county to raise money. But we have people will send us a check for a little bit of money to the Department of Emergency Management, saying for search and rescue, and they get us the money. But we also have an auction sometimes where we'll sell things. We have business donate stuff to us, and we'll put on an auction. We try to be creative on how we can raise money. But lately it's been pretty good, so we're sitting pretty good right now. But we don't, we're not funded by any government or nothing. We're all strictly volunteers. So. Come on, there must be some more questions.
I have a one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
If you're gonna blow your whistle, do you do SOS or just blow your whistle?
Just blow your
Just
whistle.
blow your whistle.
Yeah, blow your whistle. Yeah, and do it in a way, just don't do it just once and wait a long time. That'll, you keep blowing it. Maybe do a pattern if you want to do SOS, 3 dits, 3 smalls, 3 longs, 3 shorts. Yeah. That would get somebody's attention right away. It might be a little bit for someone's like, someone keeps blowing a whistle. Why, that's not normal. That's when they're going to go, maybe something's wrong. That's what they're going to think. If you just blow it once and they don't hear it for another half an hour, they're not going to think anything strange about that. Just some kid or something. So, yes.
Have you ever gone out and not found somebody?
Yes, just because we don't know if they were even in the area.
Oh my.
No vehicle, it could be foul play. That's another thing. That's where the law enforcement, as we're searching, they're behind the scenes, and we've been out in areas where we're looking for somebody and they were in a bar.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we have a name for those searches. Or they're at a friend's house, and show up later. And then, see, we've had a search where someone was at a bar, they went home, no one told the law enforcement that they came home. They're searching all throughout the night. The next day, finally an officer's like, I'm going to call the house. Yeah. Oh yeah, he came home last night. Oh, thanks for telling us. Yeah, that happens. So, yeah, if you call for a search, please tell them everything you can too. There are scenarios that we find out later that would help us find somebody if we knew the condition, their mental status. They said, no, they were all fine and all that. Well, no, you guys had a big fight, and he said he was going to do this and that, and sometimes people don't say all the facts. That's the mystery about things, but the search is a mystery, and then we're out there looking for clues to solve this mystery. And clues for footprints, candy wrappers, whatever, cigarette butts, pop cans. We look for it all, but it's kind of hard sometimes to know what is which, especially if it's on a well-traveled area. Because there's people out there, I hate to say it, but they litter and they don't pack out, so we have to sort through all that.
So if you are lost and you blow your whistle, would you just want to stay in the one spot or leave little clues as to where you're going?
If you could leave clues, that'd be great. If depends on the scenario. In the daytime, I would try to get out in an open area. Because if there's any chance of anything flying by, they're going to see you, not under tree canopy, but they'll see you out in a clearing. Raise your hands. If you have anything, try to spell something out. Just make contrast to the ground. That people, flying will see you. But nighttime, you might have to take shelter. At nighttime, if something's flying by at nighttime, they're probably going to be using FLIR, which will pick up your heat signature anyways, so they'll probably see you.
Forward-looking infrared for people who don't know
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Coast Guard uses that and all that. It's infrared, looking for heat signatures. You'll see them in, like in the police videos of the police helicopter. And isn't it kind of neat when they're running? You actually still see their footprints on the ground, and they kind of slowly fade away. That's how sensitive the heat signatures are. So, but nonetheless, they'll pick up heat signatures, and we have to go and identify if it's an animal or if it's a person. So, at least it's something. That's the thing that why they'd be flying at night. But yeah, make yourself visible in the daytime. But try to stay put, unless you think you can get out. If you're, you know, if you're not hurt. But if you're hurt, try to stay in a good, safe spot and try to do whatever you can to be visible. And noise-making devices like whistles are great. Some people,
I think one important thing is you tell somebody where you're going
yeah.
before you leave.
Yes, that's the important part. That narrows it down to 80% of time that we can now figure out that 20% on, you know, that's where we get our trackers out. Especially if you left from your car, we'll start following your footprints. Might be kind of slow, but that's the factual way how we're going to find you. We'll usually have people out there. I might have people kind of what we call sign cutting and trying to leapfrog out there to see if they can pick up your tracks. If they can, then we leap further to try to speed up time. There's techniques of looking where people like to walk, what's easy for them to walk to, and we'll search those areas, the obvious stuff first. But yes, tell somebody. More questions, please?
I don't have a question, but I remember when I've done a fair amount of hiking by myself, and if I was on a trail that divided it, it seemed like the two options were almost identical. I'd find 3 branches and put a K for Ken, and then I'd find 3 more branches and pick which trail I wanted, and then I would go out there just 5 or 10 feet and put down one, and then another one this way and another one that way, like an arrow. So K back here and an arrow
Going.
pointing that way.
Mm-hmm.
I kept getting home to her, so I learned.
Oh, you know, no, that's very smart of thinking that way because, but also it identifies if someone was to look for you and they know you're Ken, they go, hey, there's branches here like a K, which is not natural. And then if they go a little further and they see an arrow, they're like, this is a sign, we're probably on the right road, you know.
When he said not natural, was he talking about the K or the guy?
The K. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for having me. And if there's anything else in the future, like a presentation on like maybe fire skills or something specific you want, just tell me ahead of time and
We'll do that.
maybe we can do some things, you know, for.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Okay, thanks.